you, James. I was just speaking with Teresa, and we were just marveling at the connection between sessions and how we're hearing the same words come session over session. I mean, great job to this team for picking the agenda because there's a beautiful flow. So as James mentioned, I'm Jamie. I'm really, really happy to be here with you today to talk about dollars making sense. Love a good pun. And how we can drive strategic influence at work. If you've ever seen me present at an ATD stage before, I typically focus on the second part of this, how to drive strategic influence at work, how to demonstrate your impact, quantify your impact through data, and we are going to spend some time doing that. But what I realized in these conversations is something is missing. We're missing one very important thing. So, hello. Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about that thing. We're going to talk about obstacles that might exist that are standing in the way of your ability to drive that strategic influence. So I've got some learning objectives. This is our accountability mechanism. So we will know if we are able to add value through this session if we've met these objectives today. They're specific, they're measurable. So we want to identify one obstacle standing in the way of your ability to drive the influence that you want at work. We want to document one strategy that you're willing to try to evoke change. We had some really good homework assignments, so Jessica gave us one, in fact. So what can we do? And then we're going to select the checks and balances exercise to validate whether or not change occurred. Feel good about it? Okay, me too. Okay, so here's our agenda, which feels a little bit like a yoga class, but don't worry. We are here to learn. We're going to anchor, uncover, identify, action, forecast, and confirm by asking a series of questions. So that's one of the themes I'm noticing today, lots of thoughtful questions. So we'll talk about why we're here and why this matters. We're going to figure out what's holding us back and what is the cost of that thing standing in front of us. We'll figure out where are we at work? What can we do? What can we plan for now and later? What benefits might we see and how will we know that we are successful? So let's first start. Why are we here? How many of you, has anyone read any of these books or have any of them on your bookshelves? You've got one. Which one? I do too. This one is actually a newer book that Jess Amelie has written on the L&D Order Taker No More. These are all published through ATD. These books are centrally focused on how L&D can be a value driver, have a strategic seat at the table so that we are not order takers. Because if you are don't have a seat at that table, then you're on the menu, right? So that's the kind of the central focus. How do we align our instructional design with business goals? How do we measure and evaluate our work? And how do we strategically partner? There are so many resources that are aimed at helping us demonstrate our value at work. And yet, we are still not doing it consistently, right? If we think about looking at our past year of work, how many of us are absolutely thrilled with the level of impact we've been able to drive at work and the level of strategic influence we've had? How many of us are like, crushed it, out of the park, walk-off home run? I'm not. I'm certainly not. And so we're here because there's something else going on, right? We have the information we need to be successful, but we're not able yet to celebrate a home run. Why does this matter? I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide. It matters for a lot of reasons. It's a scary time, right? These unprecedented times are now precedented. We live in a sea of transformation. Things are changing so rapidly. And what's critical for us as L&D professionals is to sharpen our very human skills, which include strategic thinking and discernment. And these are things that can complement AI, but we are still going to be needing those skills as we move forward. Okay, this is my first professional headshot. And what's funny about that, picture. I have my dad's law briefcase. I'm wearing his shoes, definitely his tie and his shirt. Those are my Harry Potter glasses, though. And thank you. If you had told that little girl that she'd one day grow up to be an educational psychologist, focus on leveraging math to quantify business outcomes, she would have said you're bananas. Why is that? Because I failed pre-calculus. Because I didn't pass my AP exam for psychology. I am a psychologist. And yet, I was a terrible learner. I was awful at school. In fact, I held two fundamental truths about my capabilities. I am not smart, and sports are my ticket to college. I knew that to be true about myself growing up. And because of some very unfortunate experience I had early in math classes in particular, I just wrote myself off. I was like, I don't have the capabilities to be successful in this way. And I just resigned to that very early on. And so one of the things that could be holding us back are our self-limiting beliefs. Now, I pick on math because that's one of those areas where there's a lot of post-generational, post-traumatic PTSD. And in fact, I hear it all of the time, how teachers are passing along math anxiety to students. For example, I was sitting at an elementary school recently, and in an open house, and I heard a teacher say, "Now we have a math test coming up, and it's going to be really hard." Right there, that framing, and this teacher is well-meaning, by the way, but they were harboring math anxiety, and they're a math teacher, and they're passing that along. How many teachers stand up and say, "This spelling test is really going to get you. It's going to be really tricky to learn about Benjamin Franklin. He gives us a run for his money." That's not something, but the framing, just math alone. And I can imagine not many of us ran into an L&D profession because we love math. Yes, we're going to give it a chance to demonstrate our quantitative skills. That's not the thing. In fact, some of us probably ran here because we're no math. But now, yes, math. So as an educational psychologist and a corporate L&D strategist, I want to bridge that gap and that connection for us. Do you know 64% of people report math anxiety? 64% of people, that's a lot. 47% of people have said that it has held them back professionally. Math anxiety has been so profound for them that it's held them back professionally. And 1 in 5 people have said they missed out on an opportunity professionally because of their math anxiety. And so, again, I'm focusing on math anxiety, but you can insert thing here, the thing that you struggle with that's holding you back. That's the thing that I want us to spend a little bit of time on today before we dive into the conversation of being strategic at work. And I love all the focus of thinking about projecting a vision for ourselves and executing that vision and asking some really good questions. But I think recently I bought a house recently, and my son and I love to play soccer in the backyard. There's this really, really thorny rose bush, and there's some other what he calls pokey plants. And so what was happening as we were playing soccer is, we have to avoid that area. We've had balls punctured. We've run into that area, right? That area hurts. And so it is limiting our ability to exercise our full potential, pun intended, in my backyard. And so we're never going to be as successful as we want to be if we don't get those pokey plants out of the garden. And so I did. And yeah, it hurt. It sucked. I got poked. It wasn't fun. But change doesn't always feel good. And so what I'd like for us to do today, and we've got a worksheet in front of you, is think about why you attended this session. And then next, think about, and spend maybe, is that me? Oh, I was like, goodness. So maybe spend 15 seconds just jotting down why you attended this session. And then I want us to think about what our version of a rose bush might be. That pokey plant that's standing in your way of your ability to optimize your potential. So why are you here? 15 seconds. Okay? Quick 15 seconds. And now I want to look at what's holding us back. And one way to uncover that, our self-limiting beliefs, is to think about some of our definitive statements. If you look at the following, I'm not very good at, I've never been great at, I can't, I avoid. What are these definitive statements that we've told ourselves? If you think about your impact at work, if you think about approaching some of your work tasks, can we complete any of these pretty easily? What we're doing right now is we are surfacing opportunities that have a fixed mindset. How many of us are familiar with mindset from Carol Dweck? Quite a few of us. Lovely. So I tell the story about baby Jamie because there may be a version of that inside of each of you where you've received some messages, some criticism, some feedback way back when that has found its way into your effective garden. It's your pokey plant, and we needed to get it the heck out of there so that you can be successful and optimize your capabilities at work. And so being able to uncover this helps us think about, take that fixed mindset and make it a little bit more malleable. I'm not very good at ... yet. The power of yet. I've never been great at yet. I can't do this thing yet. So maybe we haven't given ourselves a chance or an opportunity. And I also think about, there are structural challenges that might be in the way holding us back. Today, I want to focus a little bit more on things that are within our locus of control, because those structural things may be there forever. That might just be part of the organization that you're in. And I want to be mindful of protecting our energy. And so focusing on something that we can control is a really good use of our time. And so if we are not able to effectively challenge some of these things, if we are not able to identify what is truly holding us back. And if you're unsure, by the way, I would ask some colleagues at work and your manager, I call it the spinach in the teeth feedback, that oh gosh, what's that thing? If I had to ask you, what is the one thing that's holding me back from being the most effective version of myself at work? What's that thing that you are afraid to give me feedback about, but you see it all the time, or you see it in these situations, in these instances? I'd love to know. And the cost if we stay here, and if we stay in this place where we are not able to optimize our capabilities, there's so many things that could happen. And depending upon what your role is at work, if you're leading a team, if you're an individual contributor, if you're a consultant, is that we continue to struggle in our ability to demonstrate that impact. So now we're going to bring it from kind of our personal beliefs. And by the way, you've got a nice worksheet too that we can spend some time on, right, later after the session. So you've got some homework if you'd like. But bringing this to now thinking about demonstrating our impact at work, L&D will always be viewed as a cost center instead of an investment if we aren't able to overcome and change some of these things, if we aren't able to demonstrate our impact. And so if we're thinking about L&D as a cost, it becomes a bill, right? And not just to the business, but also to L&D. So let's imagine, because of our fear of math, and again, I'm just gonna focus on this area, we're scared of failure. We're scared of measuring our trainings. We're scared of making a mistake. We're scared of sharing this information, this data with executives. We're scared that we're going to look like we don't know what we're talking about. And so therefore we don't, right? And we just say, oh, well, we just don't have the resources, right? And so you sort of write that off. Well, what happens is we end up, if we're not able to quantify our impact, we end up doing things like saying yes to trainings that we know are not going to add value. What else happens if we're not able to quantify our impact at work? What else have you seen?
Departments eliminated.
Departments are eliminated, that's right. We're not able to get the investment, we're not able to get the championship. Yeah, Leah?
They add more to our plates because they don't see us doing enough.
That's right. They add more to our plates because they're not seeing the ROI, colloquially or mathematically, on the work that we're doing. Not only are there impacts to the business, but there may be impacts to our team. Because if we're not able to drive a strategic conversation, aligning our work to business goals, being able to demonstrate our impact in the language of the business, then we lead to time wasted in the team, leading to team disengagement. We can't prioritize if we don't know what we're driving towards, if we don't know what our North Stars are that's keeping our work focused and accountable. We may have to approximate solutions because we don't have goals to hook our work into. And then we're unable to show impact. So we've got a risky, disengaged environment. L&D is seen as a risky investment. And so we talked about the cost if we stay here, the cost if we don't challenge ourselves, and also challenging environments that we're in. The business might be asking us a question or making a request. We need a time management training. And rather than saying why, we say, okay, right? Because we haven't demonstrated that credibility, and so we don't have a culture of pushing back, of asking questions. And a lot of us entered this profession because we are really focused on learning. We love learning. We want to help people be their best at work. And it seems like a paradox, but the best way we can do that is by protecting our learners from taking trainings that we know are not getting to the root cause, that we know are not going to actually add value. And so in this case, if a business executive comes to you and says, hey, I'm noticing that our teams are missing their metrics, they're missing their quotas, whatever they're measured on, and they say, so obviously we need a time management training. What do we think? What might be swirling around in our heads in that moment?
What's contributing to this?
Are the quotas too high?
What's contributing to this? Are the quotas too high?
Are the systems too cumbersome?
Systems too cumbersome? Do the people have the right tools to do their jobs? Are the expectations clear? Are they set up for success? Right? And so, but if we haven't been able to demonstrate the impact of our work to the business, that L&D is an investment, we might just say, okay, what happens when you give people who are missing their metrics, missing their goals, a time management training, people who are already stressed and strapped? What happens when we take them away from their work to give them a time management training? It gets worse. And who gets blamed? L&D. Now that's not fair. We're just doing our jobs.
Well, and the message it sends too, like that those who have to go through the training know that that's not the problem.
Right.
But they still have to do it.
Exactly. Right. So they're mad for like multiple reasons, but they're looking at you like, I'm so mad at you right now. Right. And so if we were able to demonstrate impact, we could have had a totally different conversation. We could have said, okay, so we received the same request, we have a time management training. You say, why? And they're like, well, we're missing quota. Why? What's going on with that? And let's imagine we did a needs analysis. And what we realized is the reason that people are missing quota is because their documentation isn't organized. So let's say this is a business technology team, and they have a lot of tickets that they have to resolve. And the information to resolve those tickets is all over the place. And they're relying on this Google Doc over here, and this wiki here, and this random Slack conversation once upon a time. And none of this is really well organized. What they need is not training. What they need is a knowledge hub, so they can go and have one central resource for information to do their jobs, right? And so we can look and say, all right, I've done a needs analysis. I understand what they need. We're going to build that thing, and I'm going to show you, business, that this is the thing that's going to add value. And so you can draw for them a chain of evidence to say, all right, perhaps in the past you have seen us deliver these things, learner engagement and evidence of knowledge transfer, but I want to talk to you about what else could happen, what else we can show you in our learning solutions. And so evidence of behavior change, we can see hub engagement. We can measure how many times people are going to this hub. Not just that was an interesting training, not just that they understand what the hub is for, but that they're using it. And guess what? If they use it enough times in the wild, it's going to lead to ticket times decreasing so they can solve tickets faster. That leads to clients being able to purchase the product more quickly, right? Onboard more quickly, incorporate it more quickly. And so we've got cost savings here. And so if we're able to overcome some of these beliefs that we might be harboring about, what's the point? These people are so tricky. It's never gonna, this environment isn't working. I'm not capable, the team's not capable. We don't have the resources. We haven't been successful. We've always done it this way. Any of these things that might be kind of swirling around in our heads, perhaps it's time to make a change because it could be worth it. And there's a cost if we don't. So, transitioning a little bit, in order to demonstrate a chain of evidence, there's some things that L&D needs. And I say L&D, but it really could be talent, and it could be, more broadly defined in depending upon what it is that you're doing. In here on your worksheets, you've got something, I've called it a to-do list. And so in order for L&D to be set up for success and be positioned to be the business partner that we aspire to be, to demonstrate the strategic impact, we've got to have some access to information. And so if this were easy, by the way, we wouldn't be having this conversation. All of these books wouldn't be written. And I see conference after conference. There are so many people who talk about this all the time. Here are some tactics about what L&D really needs to be set up for success. Things like objective and key result visibility. So can you or your teams explain the company's high priority business objectives and key results? What is the level of business acumen on your team? Can they talk about what the company is doing to make money? What are the biggest bets for the coming year? That's a really good place to start. And do you prioritize today enablement requests against those business goals? In other words, have you taught the business how to leverage your function? Because time management requests will come and the like will come in all day long until we tell the business, no, that's not solving the root cause of what the problem is. And so if the business goal is to drive revenue, then we can reverse engineer from that and say, great, that's our business outcome. Let's think about what behavior we need that done enough times will drive that thing. What knowledge do we need to be able to drive that behavior? What learner engagement do we need so that they're paying attention in the training? Isabel just talked about that for those who are in the session, paying attention in the training to demonstrate the knowledge, to drive the behavior, to have the business outcomes, right? So can you prioritize requests against those goals? So that if someone is making a request of you, you can say, hey, I'm not sure how this is going to drive revenue. I'm not sure how this is going to retain clients. Business, can you tell me why you think this time management training is going to lead to that? Data access. This can be tricky, but what access does L&D have available to them about company and client performance? Do you have expectations about what training impact looks like? Do you have a global measurement strategy that you're using that indicates what those behavior change metrics are, those performance metrics are? Do you have an agreement with the business on how you measure that impact? Are you expected to report on that regularly? We don't necessarily need an invitation to do this. We can come and say, hey, we've got this data and we want to share it with you, right? So if you are not offered at the seat of the table, go to IKEA, build a chair, and say, we're coming for you. We have this information. Because that's the other thing too. If we want to be seen as a strategic business partner, then we have to behave like the business, which means we have to be held accountable through data. Our learners held accountable to completing training. Our leaders held accountable to supporting training, right? So engaging with the business and thinking about what levers that you can pull. And then what is the investment in the company in terms of time? Are leaders championing L&D? And are we effectively demonstrating the value of learning? Is this showing up in our quarterly reports, the quarterly business meetings? Is L&D talking about the work that they're doing at the company? Okay. So what can we do now and what can we do next? How many folks have ever used an effort versus impact matrix? Yes, quite a few of you. Maybe it's sometimes called an Eisenhower matrix. End of year, people love an offsite, they love a retreat. This is a great exercise if you've done this before or not, a 4-box where you've got effort on one pole, impact on the other. So things that are low effort and low impact, what you could ask your team to do, by the way, or yourself, whomever you work with, get some sticky notes and write down all the things that they think would help you move closer to meeting your goals. What are all the things that we need to do in the coming year as we plan for success as a team? And then ask them to plot it across effort and impact. Is this a low effort task? And with what impact? Ideally, what we want to do is move towards tasks that have high impact regardless of effort. There's some low-hanging fruit, some quick wins. We can get those, right? What do we need to plan for? Our major projects for the coming year. And then we can also see what is not worth the squeeze, right? This is high effort, but super low impact. If you're working with a team that's like, we've always done it this way, this is a great way to shake it up and to have them thinking a little bit differently about what they could be doing. And so I added some of the things here. I have in your to-do list. What else could you ask for? What other kinds of questions could we be asking as you think about approaching work more strategically that I haven't listed that might be true for your workplace? KPIs?
Whatever you shared is exactly what I'm monetizing right now. So kind of talking to the different systems, the evidence of training actually lives outside of the LMS. And it's very important to understand that data to be able to understand, okay, so what I'm trying to do is begin with the end in mind. So these are my success metrics for these specific functions. And that's where I begin to see what data I need from what tool. And then I connect back to the training. So kind of starting from the
I love that. I love that. And you make a great point. The data that you may need may not be in a system that you have access to. You might need to go to your HR data team, your HR operations team. The thing is, especially depending upon the size of your company, someone is measuring this stuff, whether it's attrition and retention, right? Did you have something, Jeff?
I was just trying to reframe it in a small company environment, trying to figure out who to go to. And there is no data operations team.
Usually finance. Usually finance.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And getting your hand on your company's quarterly report and who's contributing to that report. Did you? Yeah, Deb?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've seen in a small company, like I work for a law firm, they tasked me with increasing the amount of cut time from the invoices. So payroll has that. And you have to kind of dig, and you have to understand, it goes back to understanding the business and beginning with the end, I think, and backing out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have seen, experienced value in historical data and asking, okay, what have we done before, and, just doing an analysis of why that didn't hit the mark can really be helpful for anything you're trying to do going forward.
Yeah, I love that. One good example that comes to mind is measuring onboarding effectiveness. And so looking at ramp time as a specific metric, how quickly have people been expected to be productive coming from day one of onboarding? And that can tell you what your program has saved in terms of time, and then you can quantify that. Yes.
Just 2 comments. The first one is the unlock for me was actually connecting my project and program and learning results to HR ROIs, which connected to the greater business. If anyone needs visibility into the types of metrics you're looking for, the ROI Institute has
Yes.
2 amazing books that will help you very much in doing that. Since then, my leaders just love my numbers. 2 is I teach decision making and own decision making at Campbell's. I tell my decision makers the debate is in the major projects area of this matrix. If you're struggling to try and figure out what your team's projects are for the year, the only thing you should be focusing on is debating those major projects, and you should be taking things out, right? There's always more that will go into the matrix. Figure out and debate, just focus on that one quadrant. Sorry, hopefully.
No, I love that. Thank you. But we are a community here to teach each other, so I think that's great. Yes.
So yes, what else might be missing from up there? I think of feedback. And, if you have someone coming to you saying we need time management training, and how did that help you in the past? That would be a question. Your feedback, I would add, that would be
Yes.
that follow-up question is how has time management training helped you in the past?
Yes.
Usually crickets.
Yes.
And so it kind of stops it dead in the water to say, okay, let's explore some other options.
Failure stories have been one of my best friends in going head-to-head with the business. And in fact, one of the things that we were tasked with at Indeed was a CRM transformation. And I was looking after the systems and tools team, among other teams at the time, and we were connected to the revenue org. And so I said, cool, CRM transformation, tell me what our expected goals are and what are our measures of success. And they're like, it's going to be great. And I said, sure. Based on the attention and the hype, and I can only imagine. Tell me in data what you're expecting to see happen differently as a result of this CRM transformation. Are we going to, shorten deal cycle times? What's going to happen here? They didn't have the data, and so it occurred to me that my team was so good. We could have played the business on TV so effectively. We were so good that what was happening is the business would say, "Hey, L&D, we need a table," and what they had in mind was a very specific, vintage robin's egg blue, side table, and my team could approximate that solution. And I was like, hey, this isn't fair. We should, just because we're good at this does not mean that we should operate this way. And so, ROI Institute, I did a pre-ROI risk analysis. I said, here is going to be the cost of this training if I don't have goals and metrics. If I approximate the solution and we're wrong, here's the cost to the business, training round 1, 6,000 people at this company. And then if I have to retrain them, here's going to be that cost. Would you like to give me some goals? And so we worked together on those goals. And it's funny you say the ROI Institute. We ended up certifying a third of our L&D team in the ROI Institute so that we could talk this language, because we were, fulfilling training requests left and right on things that did not add value. And so I wanted our team to feel really confident in being able to talk about this stuff with the business, but we hadn't done that historically. And so we invested a ton in the team, and they became mathletes, and it was great.
The other one that comes to mind for me is scope creep. Just throwing extra stuff in there.
Yes, exactly. And you can sort of windshield wiper that away and say, you told me there are these 3 priorities measured by these metrics. So has that changed, yes or no? And if you're like, no, this request is the thing, great, then what can we deprioritize? Because this is all of the bandwidth that we have. So put it back on them. Have them make that hard decision. And there are tons of benefits if we're able to change how we're doing things, right? We've been talking about it's the flip side of everything that we're doing. L&D is seen as an investment. L&D are to the business. The L&D practitioners, we feel strategic and thoughtful. We feel like we're doing work that matters. And so there are some exercises. And, I imagine in this room, there's a host of different reactions to this training or this session today, from we're kind of doing some things okay, there's some room for improvement, all the way to oh no, right? And kind of everything in the middle. One of the things that I love as a checks and balance exercise is what story does your resume tell about the work that you do? When you look at what you have down in your resume for the job you have today, do you have data in that resume to show the impact of your work? And if not, is that data accessible? And if not, this is a great signal to you to do something differently so that you have that impact story, right? Because I can tell you, the worst time to be looking for this information is after you've received that email from your CEO that says goodbye, right? So please position yourself so that you can roll with these unprecedented times, right? So mapping a solution onto that chain of evidence, starting with the end in mind, see if you can take a solution and look at the business outcomes, behavior change, knowledge transfer, engagement. Can you do that, right? So your worksheet has that in there on the back, the opportunity to do that. We've got the resume option here, so you can answer a little quiz. My resume reflects the available impact story of my work. From this session, I will work with my colleagues to update my resume, looking at what existing data might there be. Or I'm going to partner with a friend today and say, ooh, I want an accountability buddy. We're going to work on our resumes together. And then exercise free is coming through and challenging the limiting beliefs. Because if you're leading a team and you might have these limiting beliefs, we may be decreasing, I think someone said it earlier, if we think about innovation, if we think about creativity, if we think about risk-taking, fear of failure, there's so much that we might be imparting on our teams through our own belief systems about what may be possible. So just thinking about, with our locus of control, what can we do to challenge the I'm not good at, I'm never going to be able to, it's not worth it, right? So these are 3 things that we can do to know if we were successful in moving the needle just a little bit today. Okay, so accountability, our report card. Were we all able to identify one obstacle standing in the way of our ability to be successful at work? Everyone's got at least one? Do we have at least one strategy that we are willing to try to evoke change? And do we have one checks and balances exercise that we are willing to execute to validate the evidence of our change? We've got some good tactical, practical next steps. And if we are successful, we will become the strategic partners that we want to become. We'll be able to, L&D will be able to be seen as an investment. Our value will be seen, and we'll be better positioned with the business. And with that, I am so happy to have spent this time with you. I know it's the end of the day, and we are feeling a little sleepy from lunch, but I appreciate your attention and engagement and thoughts. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of tools that we didn't talk about in today's session that I'm happy to share with you if you want to reach out to me. I'm happy to take any questions, comments.
I have a metrics question.
Yes.
So you're in an organization where they're gathering metrics, but they're not clean, or there's questions about whether they're accurate. And the focus is on completion rather than consumption or even understanding anything other than the check the box. And to that, because the data is important, and I agree with you. I think data, showing the data, this number of people have completed this. And then the next is the evidence, this chain of evidence piece. I feel like that's where, like the E, I always see the E and Addie like hanging sideways. And it just doesn't, we don't get to that evaluation part.
So are you saying, like, for example, like productivity is not effectively measured, or there's
Like, knowledge transfer isn't measured in a demonstrable way.
ooh.
It's check the box, they took the course, or they attended the training, or, and sometimes, and we're struggling with this currently, is I also want to see where they stop taking the training. Is there a point 30%, 60% into the course that they just walk away because they're busy or it wasn't that good?
I would say consumption and completion should be contingent upon completing an assessment. They have to complete that assessment, that evidence of knowledge transfer, to get that checkbox, you did the thing. So I would tie the two of them together. They have not, and you can embed quizzes, obviously in e-learnings, but also in live trainings, virtual instructor-led trainings. I mean, you could throw up a Zoom poll, pre-post, right? Knowledge check, so you could measure the delta in understanding within one session. So I would make it part of the learning experience. They can't, that's like their ticket, their exit ticket. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much.